I see SOBA as a combination of, Golfer's Journal meets, the Random Golf Club for our specific community. So in a lot of ways, I think that we're trying to change the culture's perception on what sobriety can be through the lens of golf.
How you doing, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Finding New Waters. My name is B. Reeves. I'm the Director of Business Development at New Waters. And our very special guest today is Corey Davis, my new friend and founder of SOBA Golf, SOBA Golf. Welcome, Corey.
Thank you. My friend. Happy to be here.
Yeah, man. I thank you for joining us. And it's funny, the way we were connected, some people who work with us and with our social media sent me your account.
Yeah.
And I looked at who followed it, and a mutual friend of ours named Lucian.
Yeah.
And I was like, I know somebody just sent me this. And so I responded, I reached out to you through message, and you happened to have seen a clip of ours. And was that through Lucian or just through like the algorithm?
Just through the algorithm. I mean, all of 2024, I spent just doing tons of research about where golf and sobriety meet. And yours was a video that came up that I had, saved in my archives of like inspiration for SOBA. So I had recognized your face. I knew who you were. I knew who New Waters was. So when you reached out, I was definitely excited to be connected.
That was a total God shot. That was really cool.
Yeah.
And all that happened within about 3 minutes where, somebody mentioned you, I cross-referenced, sent you a message, you responded, I called you, and then Here we are.
Amazing.
Yeah, man, it's awesome. So tell me, what is SOBA Golf? What is
Yeah. So SOBA Golf is a wellness company that's focused on the intersection of sobriety and golf. So my personal story is that I got sober at 22 years old. I celebrated 14 years last year. And yeah, thank you. And my life completely changed because of my dedication to this lifestyle one day at a time. And, I never really played golf growing up, maybe once in a while here or there with some friends, try to score like 120 or something, just happen to be out there. And, like a lot of people, COVID hit and there wasn't much to do. So, at the time, my wife and I were living in Brooklyn, and things were getting weird over there. And we decided to go to her parents' house in the Lehigh Valley in Pennsylvania. And her parents happened to live in a golf course. So every day I'm waking up and having a cup of coffee and looking at this gorgeous course, and started to get this itch to to play a little bit. Couldn't afford that course, but there were some really cool munis in and around the area. Mm-hmm. So I ended up buying some clubs on eBay, and kind of the rest was history. I'd call myself probably a 30 handicap at the time, just trying to learn the game. And over the last 4 years, little by slowly, I've gotten better and better, where I'm down to a 4 handicap now. And I think, there's excitement to be better and more proficient at the game. But what I want to highlight for people, and what I'm excited to sort of share with everybody, is what I've discovered for myself and what I think others have related to, which is that golf can be a complement to your sobriety journey. And the ways in which then it sort of represented itself for me was, skills like grit, determination, mindfulness, humility, being on the first tee and knowing that you're not going to be very good, but going and doing it anyway. There's a lot of humility that's involved. And I think that translates to the sobriety journey as well, right? Early on in your recovery, there's a lot of,
absolutely.
Hey, I'm raising my hand. I'm new here. I've never been here before. Can you help me? I don't know what to do. There's a lot of relatability there. So
I completely agree. And golf is so much like life, and especially life in recovery. And one thing I would also add to that list, which I know you agree with, is the rigorous honesty, and that it's this gentleman's game. And, part of it is, it's kind of ethics being practiced, for 4 hours every day. Like yesterday, I hit my drive on the 18th hole into the woods under a tree, and I was backed up and trying to hit this weird shot with an eighth of a backswing and whiffed it. And then my next one was a nice exact draw I was trying to hit out of there, and got myself back in position and came up, and people were like, wow. And I said, that was actually, I'm actually laying three. I lie three because it took me, I whiffed one, and that's like a little example of that's rigorous honesty. Nobody would ever have known.
Yeah.
But the other, there's so many more obvious intersections for me. And, when I'm out there playing golf, when the person in front of me who's slow is upsetting my apple cart,
Sure.
that's like life.
Yeah.
When the person who's hitting into our group and that upsets me, that's like life. Things I can't control too, and then the wind, the rain, the guy who takes too long because he takes too many practice swings, all that stuff. When I'm on the beam spiritually, that stuff doesn't bother me. And then when it does, then I know that I'm a little bit off, and golf is a great way to, is a great barometer for that.
Yeah.
And, go ahead.
It's a great mirror, and, I think it's definitely been explored, the ways in which golf and life parallel one another, and all the ways that you mentioned. I think what we're trying to do with SOBA is just explore the ways in which golf and sobriety can be a complement, and the stories that we're trying to tell, and the people that we're trying to highlight. It's been really cool. We launched January 1st, and since then, I would say almost every single day I get pinged by new members, community members, people who are just following on social who are like, I'm 5 years sober. Golf's a huge part of my recovery, for the reasons that you mentioned before too, right? The things that we can practice out there that are so helpful on our journey.
Yeah, not to mention it also, the biggest thing for me when I started playing golf when I was really young. My dad, who died 7 years ago today, actually,
Wow.
he, gave me a set of clubs when I was probably 4, I think it had a 2-wood, a 7-iron, and a 9-iron, and a putter. But I started playing golf really young, loved it. Played a little, not very competitively, played in a few tournaments. I played my freshman year in high school in the team. But kind of, it lines up pretty perfectly from when I started dabbling with alcohol and drugs, is when my, not love for golf, because I never didn't stop loving it. I just became less of a priority. And then over time, my dad, who would always want to take me out and play golf, I couldn't be relied on to make a tee time with him and his friends. And, he just kind of, over time was like, yeah, he doesn't really want to play or doesn't care enough to show up. Then, we won't play anymore. And so, I'd play like twice a year from high school through getting sober, maybe a few times one year, a few less the next. But when I was sitting in treatment, I was there in the summer, and the British Open was on while we were in treatment, and got to watch that. And towards the end, I'm sitting in this group, and they hand us basically a list of stuff to do sober. And I'm reading this list, and I'm not joking. Some of these ideas, basket weaving and salsa dancing, and golf was on there. I was like, I do love golf.
Yeah. And
so I got out of treatment and I just started playing golf. I mean, I took some more time off work. All I did was go to meetings and play golf for months, maybe arguably a little too long, but fortunately it did work for me. But the thing is, it took 5 hours at least to play golf, because, it takes a little while to get out there, put your stuff on, and then go play for 4 hours and change, and then drive home. And that was, I needed a time killer. Especially in those early days when I had too much time on my hands. I mean, it killed the whole day. And, when I know I told you this, but when I first started, got into recovery out of treatment in Raleigh, into the recovery community, these old timers were like, be careful out there playing golf, buddy. I was like, what do you mean? And because rightfully so many people had associated with drinking and drugging and bachelor parties. I did plenty of that. But I did so much of it when I was young, before I ever smoked a cigarette, much less had a drink or a drug. And I was always walking, and that's where the memories took me, not necessarily back to those like debauched bachelor parties.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's a good thing to talk about, I've heard this a lot from members in our community where they're newly sober and they're nervous about going back to the golf course. Golf has historically been synonymous with drinking culture. And
Mm-hmm.
I think, having a community available to them to let them know that, there's cool people like yourself and hopefully me that they can relate to and connect with, it just makes that transition a little easier. And I think for some, it doesn't affect them like you, and you have positive memories that, you're aligned with, and that's great too. So, I just think, the culture in general, and I'm cool to play with whoever, if you're not going to be obnoxious and annoying, if you're drinking or doing your thing, like, it doesn't really bother me. But I'm also, years into this and feel pretty comfortable. And maybe this is a good segue to talk about the band Fish, which we both kind of are related to as well. Like, I've been to over 100, almost 100 Fish shows, and I would say, I don't know, 95% of them have been sober, so like, I think that's one of the promises that we're awarded in this world, is that, if you kind of take the time and be patient. When I was patient, it allowed me to have a world that was really big, and I could go and do whatever I wanted. I just couldn't drink or use,
Exactly. And I mean, I was sitting in treatment, and I told you about the list of things to do.
Yeah.
The other thing that happened that relates to this topic is I was on a pink cloud, feeling so good. I was laughing like I hadn't since I was probably 12. I just felt so free again.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden I had this 30-second moment of terror where I said, wait a minute, how am I ever going to go to a party again, a wedding again, to a concert again, a football game again, go to Europe again, go to New York again, go to New Orleans again, go on a date again, go to all this stuff. And I just sort of panicked for about 30 seconds. Then I was like, wait a minute, how did I do that before? I was so chained to having substances in the right amount. And is the bar going to close? Am I going to be able to meet up with the guy after all that? That was the real prison. So thank God that terror was very short lived. It was literally about 30 seconds. But when I got out of treatment, Fish was playing in Raleigh about a week, maybe 10 days after. So it would have been coming up on 6 weeks of sobriety, had a new sponsor, told him about going to Fish. And he said, I was like, I'm sure I'll be all right. He said, maybe, probably. But let me ask you this. Would you be going to hear the music, be with your friends, or see what it's like? And I just said, I don't know what you're asking me, but I'm not going. So I left town and just got away from the whole scene. They were playing in Hampton in October of that year. I was about 4 months sober, asked me the same question. By then I understood the question, which was, yes, I would be going to hear the music. I love Fish. Yes, I'd be going to be with friends, but I would be going, the overriding reason to go would be to see what it's like to hopefully make it through this show without being miserable, or worse, picking up a drink or a drug. And so I didn't go then. And then 6 months sober, they're playing in New York. I had tickets if I wanted. By then I was really, working through steps, and felt pretty good. My recovery felt stable and secure. And I was kind of on the fence about it. And I heard an Ask Trey snippet on Jam On, which is now Fish Radio. And they were asking Trey about his pre-show ritual. And he mentioned saying the 11th step prayer and trying to imagine playing sober for just one person. And there were a bunch of other things he said. And I was like, that just answered my question. I'm going. And I went to meetings every day in the village. I went to the fellowship meetings at Set Break. But to your point, I was patient. I was patient. I waited until I was ready. And I was open to the universe's suggestions of when I was going to be ready.
I love hearing your story, and it brings me back to my early days as well. I always get a little nervous for people that are so jazzed up about sobriety. Like the guys who are just like, I love being sober. It's the greatest thing ever. It's like, that wasn't my experience, like my experience was like, I'm 22 years old. Like, what the fuck am I doing here? You know, like, you know, how long am I going to have to do this for? You know, but what happened to me was this sort of slow recovery, this slow transformation, this slow like spiritual experience of like hearing people at groups that sounded like me, but were on the other side, that were sober, you know, and I saw something in their eyes that they had that I didn't have. And it was very attractive to me. And I love your story as it relates to just saying no a couple times, but now look at you, you know, years later, you can go wherever you want. You could go to as many shows as you want to go to. And that was my experience too. I got sober in May of 2010, and then fast forward, you know, December, I live in New York, you know, December, you know, Fish is always playing there. And that first show, I was ready by December. All of the summer tour, I sort of said, no, thanks. I can't do it. And the previous year in 2009, I went to like 25 shows when I wasn't sober, you know, like I was back, I was at Hampton when they came back, and then I followed them around the country. And, you know, it was just time to kind of take a moment and build that foundation. And I would just say to anyone listening, like that foundation has like, you know, awarded me the life I have today. Like the things I did in my first year of recovery have literally stayed with me and given me the life I have today, for sure.
I hear you. Yeah. And I, you know, it's funny. I've talked about both of these things so much since I've been sober: fish and sobriety, golf and sobriety, what they've meant to me. But like this aspect you brought up of just being patient with it, I mean, it's so true. And building that foundation, without a rock solid foundation, we're going to be on shaky ground. And that's why it's so important to take these suggestions. It's funny because people will go to treatment or even come into the rooms so broken. I'll do anything, you know, and then they start getting complacent and think that they don't need it anymore. And then they're not building a foundation. And so when that big breeze or that gust or, you know, a hurricane comes, they don't have that stability to withstand it.
Well, I think what it comes down to, and this is just my perspective and my personal experience, is that I had to be humbled, you know, and humility is like an action, right? It kind of goes back to the first tee example. It's like, you can't just say you're humble or you're experiencing humility. You have to like walk through it, you know? And I'm just thinking about myself 14 years ago as a 22-year-old kid. Like that was a kid who was broken. I was broken, you know, I was completely lost. And what I did was what people told me to do. I just did what, you know, elders and mentors said, like, sit down, shut up, you know, and go make coffee, you know, and that's kind of like, there's a lot of like humility involved in doing those things. But, you know, they say kind of like pain is the touchstone to a lot of the growth that you can have. And I would just say, yeah, like, one of my buddies says too, like gratitude is an action word too, you know, and I kind of just like that thought of like, you can't say these things, you have to kind of do them. And, yeah.
Exactly. It's like faith without works is dead. I can sit here all day long and say, you know, I believe in power greater than myself, but I can't just expect the power greater than myself to take the wheel. Yeah. You know, I've got to do the work.
Just on that,
yeah,
like one of my mentors would tell me a lot. It's my responsibility to reach my arms out as far as I can go. And then sort of God, the universe, whatever can do the rest. And I've always sort of related to that. And some days I don't want to do shit, you know, I don't want to do anything. And I yesterday was a great example of like, excuse me, I was feeling a little sad and woe is me about some stuff. I won't bore you with it, but like the day I ate like 2 bagels in the morning, and then like for lunch I had a slice of pizza, and then I was eating like all this ice cream at night. And it's like, those are ways that I could soothe my soul these days. They're like short little instant gratification, but like today I felt horrible this morning. But
I get it.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. When I mean, the way, we have this disease of more.
Yeah.
And I remember my mom saw me. I think maybe the first Thanksgiving I was sober.
Yeah.
And I was also I was losing a bunch of weight, doing like exercise and low carb, nothing crazy, but just but I was losing weight pretty fast, and so I was pretty good, and I was very disciplined. And I had no discipline. Then all of a sudden, I had more discipline than I even knew what to do with.
Yeah.
But when I would have a little cheat day and break bad, it was pretty ugly. And we were at the beach over Thanksgiving, and I was eating dessert, and I was having a little cheat moment, which I would do on purpose. But either way, and she just saw me just eating like 4 or 5 desserts and was like, what in the world? And I was like, this is what I used to do with substances when you shouldn't see it.
Yeah.
I mean, this is how I act when I'm, untethered.
Yeah. I can relate.
But, I wanted to make sure we talked about one thing that we talked about briefly on that first time we talked on the phone. And I talked to this guy the other day. He's a guy, young guy, cool guy, see a lot of myself in him. He had come to New Waters and is now at a longer term program. And he's a big golf guy. He's 26, young, definitely, he's worried about how am I going to have fun? The same things I worried about. And it sounds like you worried about.
Mm-hmm.
And, he had, I talked to him a little bit about the golf that I've, been fortunate enough to play mostly through my job. And he's asked me a couple of times, how can I find a network of people to play golf with like this in sobriety? How is this even possible? And I found myself, and the couple of times he and I talked about it, getting really specific about, well, I got these friends who I grew up with who, are also sober. And then some guys who, don't really drink when they play golf. And I play with this guy and that, and then also this work. And I was going on and on. And then I realized, what the real answer is, man? The real answer is I got sober and do the work to stay sober. And my golf life, like every other piece of my life, just falls into place. That's the real answer.
Yeah. No, you're right. I think it comes down to, like what we talked about before, if you build that foundation and you sort of allow yourself to heal, in these ways and sort of remove yourself from drugs and alcohol, for a couple months, and you get to see what your life can turn into. And that was my experience. And, I think, for people who are concerned about the life they're going to be missing out on, or feeling like they have FOMO, I've never really experienced FOMO. I don't know, something about me. I never feel like I'm missing out because everything I do and every decision I make feels generally intentional, except for like eating ice cream last night, like I did, but for the most part with like events and friends and things like that, like I don't like to do shit that I don't want to do, and I really like to do things that I like to do. And, so all we're asking, I don't, for that 26-year-old, I'm not asking him to do anything. I wish him the best and, hope he has a wonderful journey. But what I would say is like, all I haven't done in 14 years is not drink and use drugs. And like, that's awarded me this wonderful life. It doesn't mean I haven't been an asshole or, haven't made mistakes. But it's kept me in the game, and it's allowed me to, continue to progress in my life professionally, with my family, but most importantly, like learning myself more and continuing to make this like investigation on myself to be better and serve as best I can.
Yeah. Well, and the humility being in action, all of the principles and concepts are all interwoven. And if I could sum up recovery in a word, it would be willingness. And that can be, that's willingness backed up by action, or deliberate inaction is an action. And what I would say there is, sometimes it's important for us we got to be willing to do things we don't want to do. We get to, for me, pray and meditate. And I didn't want to do that stuff when I first got sober. Yeah. Some days I still don't want to, but I still do it. And call people on that 500-pound phone and ask them how they're doing, and go get phone numbers from men after a meeting in a church, and make coffee and do readings, and just follow, like, to bring this kind of full circle. My dad, who taught me how to play golf, amazing guy, just taught me so much, just an amazing guy. My mom, who was a tennis player when I was a kid, my dad played golf, parents both remarried. But my mom would always say to me, when all else fails, read the directions. And I would sort of laugh it off, shrug it off, but she meant it figuratively and literally. I mean, I would put together models and not put the engine in there, but it would just have the shell and the stickers and the seats and the tires, and that would be it. And it was kind of a, metaphor for my life. Like, oh, if it looks like everything's fine, then it is. And then, but I got to treatment, and I started thinking about that, and I realized that the directions are in some books I read on a regular basis, and on some walls of some places I go on a regular basis, and finally read and follow directions. And those directions can be, do this stuff, or more importantly, sometimes, like, be willing to not do things that are going to make us feel good for instant gratification and getting our way. I wanted to get my way all the time, sometimes just for the sake of getting my way. And when my sponsor said, he didn't even tell me not to go to the fish show, he just presented this questions to me.
I love that.
And I, for once in my life, was willing to say, you know what? I'm willing to not do this thing that I want to do because I want to do it and get my way. And that has paid dividends that are immeasurable. And before, I just was not interested in anybody's help. I did want your handouts. I wanted a free ticket to that show, but I didn't really want any help from anybody.
Yeah. Well, I definitely want to acknowledge, I'm really sorry about your dad, and 7 years ago. It's unique. I'm sure it's an interesting, reflective day for you.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, no, I appreciate that. And I definitely was not trying to be a downer. I just, he's a big part of my golf life. And then, but I said full circle, but my mom, who was a tennis player, and my mom started playing golf a little bit later in life.
Yeah.
And my relationship with my dad was not great when he died, because I got sober a couple months after that, and using his illness and ultimately death as a reason to self-medicate exacerbated everything.
Yeah. And
my relationship with my mom was not great. My stepdad, none of my relationships were good until I got sober.
Yeah.
But my mom is literally my favorite person to play golf with, and she rides and I walk, and we have a great rhythm. And, it's just so funny. My dad, who taught me how to play golf, sort of left me that legacy that now I get to carry on with my mom. And it's a beautiful thing. We have an awesome time playing golf together.
That's amazing. Yeah. I just want to acknowledge that, because it's a unique day with sometimes when someone passes, and, it's the anniversary of that. So I just want to acknowledge that. And,
well, thank you very much.
Yeah. And, with the instructions, I never ever read instructions either. I think it's like just of the type, maybe. I don't know. I'm kind of like a flying by the seat of my pants guy, just like learning things on the fly. But I like the imagery of, you being in your rehab or wherever you were, and having the model car without the engine. It's like, yeah, everything looks good on the outside, like you said, but on the inside, I'm just, kind of a wreck. And yeah, it is a unique experience, starting to get vulnerable with people, especially men. And I think that in general, men are really suffering right now. Men are having a tough time. I think they're isolating more, It's easier to kind of be by yourself or on your phone and all those sort of things. And I would just say that the men in my life who are walking this journey are some of the most important people in my life. And there's a couple people who I talk to that know literally everything about me. And I've never felt shame or guilt from these people. And I would just say, if you're listening, there are people out there that want to support you with no shame, no guilt, nothing in return, and try to find your people, because it's really important. And yeah, the phone definitely feels really heavy in the beginning, with those numbers that you get. And, but again, like, you don't have to be friends or talk to everybody. I learned that the hard way kind of early on. I took advice from people that maybe I didn't really like as much, or, I had the other day, someone asked me, one of my best friends actually said to me, do you mind if I give you some feedback about SOBA? And I said, no. I said, I don't want feedback. Thank you. And it's because, for one, I'm kind of setting a boundary in my life, where I'm trying to just get information from people that I respect. And it's not that I don't respect him, but I just didn't feel like getting into it. When you have a vision about something, it's important to be precious about it. And if you know what you're doing and you know where you want to take something, you don't really need that many opinions. Trust your gut, trust yourself. And, at the same time, having a couple people that you can tally the score for you and look at it with you is also really important.
Absolutely. And you just said something really interesting I hadn't thought about in a while. I heard this early days of recovery. So I heard a guy say one time, I can't trust my head or even my heart, but I can trust my gut. Because my heart's fooled me before. I certainly can't trust my head, but my gut's right. I usually know.
Yeah. There's probably another thing I can't trust, but I won't say it on air.
I hear you. So with SOBA, what do you, other than it, it's a wellness company and you've got a social media presence.
Yeah.
And we've talked about some of your ideas, but how do people get involved with it?
Yeah. So we're really excited about this year, for 2025. It's kind of just an introduction to who and what we are. I see SOBA as a combination of, Golfers Journal meets, the Random Golf Club for our specific community. So in a lot of ways, I think that we're trying to change the culture's perception on what sobriety can be through the lens of golf. And I think the stigma of addiction and mental health is starting to change. And I think using golf as a medium to sort of start that movement is really important to me. As far as how people can get involved, we have a digital community right now. It's hosted on Discord, if you're familiar with that tool. You go to our website, soba.golf, www.soba.golf/join. You just fill out a couple of questions about who you are, where you're from, and you'll be entered into the community. And yeah, we have people all across the country and the world right now who are in there. And the vision for it is that one day you'll be able to go into your state, North Carolina, and you'll be able to, say, hey, I'm B from Raleigh. Where are my people at? And, you could find more people to play golf with in your local area. And it's starting to happen already. We had our first local event last week. It was run by a chapter leader in Minnesota. He put on an event for 15 people at a simulator. Obviously can't play golf yet in Minnesota, but he's putting on another one in March and then another one in April. And it's all grassroots run. It's all volunteer based right now. And it's just people trying to connect with others who love golf and who are on this journey. And, the community part of it and the digital aspect is going to be really important. And then, we're putting on our first retreat. So we do feel like there's this opportunity to pair golf and wellness. So imagine you go on that golf trip to Pinehurst, which is something that we're considering doing for our first one. And in the morning, we have meditation. One day we have yoga. Another day we have breath work with specialists. And then we get to play all these wonderful courses. And then we come back, we have group sessions led by a clinician. And it's just another way to experience these world-class golf trips without, being around people who are necessarily partying or experiencing the in different ways. And there's nothing wrong with that too.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And then, there's a content perspective. We're trying to tell people stories. I think you're going to come on our podcast, so that'll be cool. And, there's some really cool people out there who love golf and are sober. And so I'll just say the three aspects are, our digital community on Discord, our events that are coming up soon, and then the content that we're pushing out.
Man, I'm psyched for you and for SOBA, and I can't wait to see you out at Weekapaw.
Yeah. Not
Weekapaw.
Yeah.
Arizona, Recovery Open.
Sharing in the groove.
Yeah. Groove too high or low. I hope not. Well, dude, thank you so much for being on here today. I'm so glad we got connected, and it's just, this is synchronicity right here. And, you've already given us how to find you, and I look forward to being on your podcast. And I think you said we're going to try to record that while we're in Arizona. That'll be cool.
That'd be awesome.
But yeah, and anything we can do to help, please let me and us know what we can do to help you and help you grow and connect you with anybody. And, this, like we talked about from the top, golf is a microcosm of life, and especially life in recovery. There's just so much overlap. We couldn't cover it all here on a podcast. So, Corey, you're the man. Thank you so much, man.
Thank you so much. I'm super grateful. And, whatever you do, take care of your shoes.
I hear you. Thank you.
Okay.
If you liked what you heard today or just want to know more, give us a call on 919-670-8119 or visit us at newwatersrecovery.com. Thank you.